Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Wilson Center. Welcome to this Global Europe Program event on Turkey's presidential elections 2014. What do they mean for Turkey's democratization process, Turkish, and the Kurdish question, and Turkish foreign policy? We're delighted to have so many of you here. I'm Christian Osterman. I direct the Global Europe Program, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Center here to our auditorium. I'm just making a couple of introductory remarks, and then I'll turn it over to Marina Ottaway here to chair the panel. Let me just say that for those of you who are not familiar with the Wilson Center, we are, of course, the nation's memorial to President Woodrow Wilson, chartered by Congress, and we are one of the nation's key nonpartisan policy fora for tackling global issues through independent research and open dialogue to inform actionable ideas for Congress, the administration, and the broader policy community. I think today's event is a very timely one in the wake of the elections, and certainly the crisis in Iraq and Syria has brought Turkey into new focus here in Washington, but clearly today's discussion will be broader than just Turkish foreign policy. We're also going to look at the domestic developments, including prospects for constitutional and judicial reform, the Kurdish peace process, and other important issues. We're doing this in partnership with three organizations that I want to gratefully acknowledge here as partners in organizing this meeting. First, the Friedrich Ebert Foundation here in Washington, the DC office, who is co-sponsoring this event. And its new director, Michael Meyer, here will talk and just give remarks in just a moment. I also want to acknowledge Knut Punknen. Where are you, Knut? Back there, for just great partnership over the years in helping to organize this event. Secondly, the Turkish Economic and Social Studies Foundation, TESEV, being one of the co-organizers here and really being instrumental in helping to bring this event about. And of course, our sister program here at the Wilson Center, the Middle East program, directed by Hale Esfandiari, who unfortunately cannot be here with us this afternoon. Let me thank Marina Ottaway, Wilson Center senior scholar and renowned both Russian and Middle East specialist. We're delighted to have you here and sharing and moderating this discussion. And let me just say a word about Michael Meyer, who may not be familiar to most of you. He's the brand new director of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung's Washington office. He was just appointed representative here to US and Canada. He comes from us from Turkey, where he's been for 5 years, so it's a perfect matchup for this event. He's also served as head of the Western Europe and North America department at the Ebert Foundation's headquarters in Berlin. He was also the representative in Senegal, Ethiopia, and Botswana. And he's an expert on foreign and security policy in the MENA region, and again has focused on Turkey's role and has had a number of advisory positions within the German Social Democratic Party as well. And he holds diploma in African Studies from Leipzig University, University of Bonn, and he is also co-author of a book on elections in Africa. So welcome to Washington, welcome to the Wilson Center, and I'll turn it over to you for some remarks, and then we'll get the show on the road. So thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this attention, for coming to this event. Thank you also to the three organizing bodies here represented. I would like to say a few things about, from my personal perspective, after having served 5 years in Turkey, about the issue of today's discussion. Let me just say that the election results did not surprise us, as I think all of us. We have seen the first directly and democratically elected president, Mr. Erdogan, who was winning the elections in the first run with more than 50%. More than 21 million voters gave him their vote of confidence, even though the participation rate was relatively low with 74%. We can say that he was elected by a majority of the people who went to the elections. This is the 9th consecutive election since 2002, which was won by the AKP. And this is not by surprise. I think there were some good reasons for the victory of Mr. Erdogan and for the victory of the AKP during the last local elections in March. First of all, economy. This is the single most important factor of all the victories of the AKP during the last years. The economy is going well, even though growth rates are going down a little bit, but still Turkey is in progress. And I think they have the 19th quarter of growth now, just passed, and this is a huge success story. His voter base, the voter base of the AKP, bought the arguments which came up by the AKP on the corruption allegations of December and also on the coup attempts. So most of them believe what the government was saying, even though courts have to work on it, etc., but they stick to what the government was saying. There are some challenges ahead for the new Turkish government under Mr. Davutoglu. From my point of view, the biggest one is the Kurdish peace process. We'll talk about it now. I think the peace process for the moment got stuck. We have to see whether the new government is willing and able to give more rights to the Kurdish people, especially administrative autonomy, cultural rights, right of education in mother tongue, or whether they will be willing to cancel or lower down the 10% electoral threshold, which is still in place in Turkey, the highest in the world. And whether they will be willing also to abolish the anti-terror law, which is very difficult for Kurdish people. So I think the Turkish peace process is the biggest challenge for the government, but also the democratization process. We have seen some problematic developments during the last month or years since the election in 2011. You all remember the events of Gezi and how it was handled by the government. Relatively difficult. You have heard about the problems surrounding press freedom, freedom of speech. We have to talk about it. I'm sure this will be an issue today. And you have also heard maybe about the failure of a new constitution coming up. So we try to work on a new constitution, including the Ebert Foundation. We try to support our Turkish partners, but in the end we failed. We couldn't. The Turkish government couldn't get into an agreement with the opposition. So we expect a new approach after the next elections in 2015. On foreign policy, Turkey wants to become an active policy actor in the Middle East and even on the global level. But from my perspective, Turkey has to assume also its responsibility, which is linked to this challenge. And one of the most important steps from my point of view is to come to better terms with Israel and with Egypt, two major players in the region, but also to strengthen the ties more with their traditional allies, like the United States or Europe. So I think there is a lot of work ahead of the Turkish foreign policy. We just heard the speech of President Obama yesterday, and Turkey, I think, plays a crucial role in the fight against the Islamic State in Syria and in Iraq. Turkey, in one way or the other, has to support the operations directly or indirectly. There are air bases in Turkey. Turkey shares a border with Syria. It's more than 900 kilometers long, the border. So Turkey plays an absolutely crucial role in the fight against the Islamic State. Let's see how Turkey acts now. There is already a lot of discussion going on. Yes. Now, to end up, I would like to say a few words from a European perspective. Turkey belongs to the EU. This was always our opinion. Turkey was member of the Council of Europe, NATO member since 1952. Turkey is in the accession negotiation process. Turkey has 40% of the foreign trade with the EU, and 2/3 of the foreign direct investment is coming from the EU. So for the EU, Turkey is a very crucial and strategic partner on the southeastern border of Europe. And we have to do whatever we can to keep Turkey together with Europe, to strengthen the ties. From a German perspective, there are more than 3 million people of Turkish origin living with us. And it's not only a foreign policy issue for us, it's a domestic issue. That's why we are so keen to cooperate with Turkish partners. I hope we will have fruitful debates today, and I'm looking forward for a very fruitful and active question and answer session. And with this, I hand over the word to Marina. Thank you very much.
Okay, I will keep my introductory remarks very brief, just to point out how historical events drive what happens with these things that we organize. We started out with the last July, I think, with the idea of organizing a very modest roundtable discussion, and we booked a room for 40 people. And then as events changed this summer, we had to move to a bigger and bigger and bigger room, and we wish we had an even bigger room than this. We have some people in an overflow place. I think part of the interest is driven not just by the elections, but also, of course, by the role that Turkey can, should, might, depending on points of view, play in the crisis in Iraq and Syria. So I have asked the speaker to limit their initial intervention to 10, 12 minutes at most. Try to keep it short, because I am sure that there are going to be a lot of questions from the audience, and we'll see in which direction those questions will drive the direction. Very briefly, let me introduce the speakers. We'll proceed in the order in which they are listed on the program. The first speaker is going to be Etienne Makschubian, more or less, who is presently a consultant with the TESEV, previously served as director of the TESEV's democratization program. He's also a journalist. He writes for numerous newspapers, and also is involved in he contributes to TV channels. So he clearly straddles the line between journalism and think tank activity. The second speaker is going to be Mesut Yegan, to my right, who is professor of sociology at the Sehir University in Istanbul. He taught in other universities, including the Anatolia University and the Middle East Technical University in Ankara. The third speaker to my left does not need as much introduction to a Washington audience, because she is a fixture for anybody who is interested in Turkey in Washington. Tonil, I always butcher names. Gonil Tol is the director of the Center for Turkish Studies and the Middle East program, and she's involved in all discussions in most discussion of Turkey here in Washington, I would say. No matter where you go, she turns up. So without further ado, Etienne, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Now I will use half of my time to give a brief introduction on the background of the elections. And I hope at the end of the 6 minutes, all the people in the room will know why AK Party is winning all the elections and also will go on winning again all the elections in the next 10 years at least. Now, we are going through a radical sociological transformation in Turkey, especially the Islamic community, starting from 1990s, beginning of 1990s. And of course, the background of this background is the critique of modernity in the West by the Westerners and globalization. The result was that the importance of the Muslim identity increased, self-confidence increased, and we had seen the rise of the periphery as a political, economical, social, cultural actor in Turkey. And AK Party is the result of this. AK Party did not create this phenomenon, but is the result of that. So AK Party, in fact, is not a typical political party that we have in, like the others in Turkey. It's a movement. So it's very elastic, very versatile, transforming, mobilizing, open to reconstructing, and so on and so forth. Now, combining this political side with the sociological side, what is happening? It's a revolution, historically speaking. Something is coming to an end, and something new is forming. We don't know what it is really, but it's on the making, and AK Party is the only actor who kind of steers this process. And the aim is to reconstruct the republic on a more legitimate basis. Now, when we say legitimate, quote unquote, it stands on two pillars. One is the Muslim identity, but it is not a religious identity anymore. It's more like a cultural identity, more and more in Turkey. And the second is the Ottoman heritage, so more pluralism, cosmopolitanism, taking responsibility for the other, like in the Ottoman period, bringing in the memory again, the pre-Republican era, and so on and so forth. So, on the one hand, we have a process of adaptation, reaching out to the global world and so on, but at the same time, this is a dynamic of assertion. We want to be in the global world, in the region. We want to be an actor and so on. This feeling, this new feeling that is shared by all the Muslims, or we have to say Sunni, new generations and AK Party cadres. Now, after 2002, this process was faster and faster. And again, we see two kinds of transformations going on. One is the transformation of religiosity. Now, more people are calling themselves religious in Turkey, but when you ask what they understand from religiosity, it differs very, very much. And, you know, sometimes it's not related to religion at all. Demand for Sharia, for example, is nil now, whereas in 1990s it was about 8 to 10% at least, but it has gone down with AK Party. Ethics and morality is considered to be something different than religion now. That's a new concept again in the Islamic circles. So this is the transformation of religiosity. And the other thing, the other leg, if I may say, so that is the transformation of the community structure. Now we have the Islamic community is more porous. It's much, much easier to go in and out. It's much more elastic. There is a tolerance, there is a pluralism within the Islamic community. So it is as if, and it's like an invitation card to the secular community. So we see more and more people from the secular side going in and out, interacting with the Islamic community, and becoming half religious, if I may say so. Like fasting 3 or 5 days in the Ramadan, or just going to the mosque on Fridays, and so on and so forth. So this gives the capability to form hybridized individuals, hybridized families, and so on and so forth. Now, on top of all this, we have to add the success of AK Party in economy, infrastructure, health, urbanization, and so on. And the result is a new middle class. In fact, by objective criteria, the members of the middle class has increased 2 times, or 100% in the last 10 years. It was 20%, now it's 40%, and it is enlarging. And this is the constituency of AK Party, and AK Party is the only party who represents this growing dynamic and this growing new kind of community. And that's why the potential that AK Party can get in every election is getting higher and higher. And that's why they are getting higher and higher votes. And if we don't have any problems with the economy and all the others which I cited, then this dynamic, it seems, will go on at least 10 more years. And then maybe there is a kind of a limit, you know, a sociological kind of a fed-up point, and then it may stop. And then, if it stops at that point, we will have real politics in Turkey. Because now we don't have real politics. We have a movement, a historical movement, and an opposition to the historical movement. So this, the things that I am telling you now was realized in the beginning of 2013. And the realization was based on 4 facts, if I may say so. One is that, as I said before, something is coming to an end, and we are on the verge of a new era. Secondly, AK Party is the only actor to carry this. Third, the elections, the 3 elections that were coming at that date was a turning point for Turkey. So 2 elections in 2014, the local and presidential, and the general election in 2015 that we will have in June. And fourth, the most important was the first election, because if AK Party wins that election, people thought, certainly they will be in a point to win the second election, and most probably they will win the third as well. So if you want to stop AK Party, the best time was before the local elections. And that's why Gezi turned into something else in process. And that's why we had 17th and 25th of December operation. Now, everything has passed. I will not go into the figures of the election, but when we look at the future, I can use the comparison between Gül and Davutoğlu in order to understand what kind of future we will have. Now, AK Party had a hard time to choose, really, because most of the people in the cabinet and in the parliament were backing Gül. And Tayyip Erdogan spent something like 3 months to talk to and try to convince people that Davutoğlu is better. And why was that? They had 6 criteria on the table. 3 we can combine as the hard package and 3 as a soft package. The hard package is first solving the Kurdish question, 2 having a new constitution, and 3rd reconstructing the judiciary, or cleaning the judiciary from the networks that exist in bureaucracy. And the soft package was keeping intact the party. Secondly, winning the election by a good margin in 2015, that is. And the 3rd, kind of softening the relations with the West. And the problem with Gül was that although he was better in the soft package, he was not trustworthy in the first package. But Davutoğlu have been seen by the cadre of the AK Party to be much more capable in accomplishing the needs of the first package. And also people thought that he will be this way or another, much better than Tayyip Erdogan in relations with the West anyway. And having Tayyip Erdogan as president, in fact, will be a firm ground for the party to keep the members intact and winning the next election. So Davutoğlu was chosen. And what we will going to see in the future will be a very close relation with between the prime minister and the president. Formal and informal relations will be, going together in a way, merging. On the hardcore subjects, we will see a very strong intention to deliver all those three. And we will see a combination of the internal politics with the foreign policies. A last note is I want to put down is regarding the threats or the threat perception of AK Party. AK Party is swinging between being democratic and being authoritarian. If there is a threat, they go to the authoritarian way. And they don't lose, by doing that, they don't lose any votes, because they can explain to the public why they are behaving more authoritarian. Because there is a threat, and the public seeing, or the constituency seeing that, or believing that AK Party is their own agent, owns the party, backs up this party. So, but every time the threat decreases, or AK Party is kind of in a position where they can move with the democratic program, and they don't, then we see a complaint from the Islamic community itself, that is the constituency of AK Party itself. So AK Party, if there is no threat, is bound to be more democratic if they want to get these votes. But if there is a threat, they can easily go to the authoritarian way, and they can still win all those elections. So thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very rare to have a speaker who keeps so closely to the time, and I thank you for that. Please.
Okay, thank you for having me here. Well, I was planning to give some actually background information concerning the peace process, but once I was told that I will have only 10 minutes, so I changed my mind and I decided to speak about the peace process on the basis of some basic questions. That means I'll try to provide my own answers to some basic questions which have been asked in the past few years. Now, the first question that I would like to answer is whether the peace process is actually as important as it is claimed or as it is suggested, or is the peace process first of its kind, or have there been similar attempts in the past in Turkey? This is going to be the first question. The second question that I would like to answer is why actually the peace process started in 2010, and why the two main actors of the process, namely PKK and the government, remained committed to the process despite the PKK's claim that nothing much has been done in the past few years, and despite the fact that PKK stopped the process of withdrawal. Okay? And the third question that I would like to answer is what has actually been done in the past few years. And the fourth question that I want to reflect upon is what are the stances of other actors in the peace process? I mean, the actors other than the PKK and the government. Now, let me begin with the first question. Well, if you assess what the Turkish state had done in the past, especially in the years between, if you look at, what the Turkish state did up until 1990s, you can easily say that, yeah, the peace process is quite novel, it's important, so on and so forth, simply because up until 1990s, the Turkish state coped with the Kurdish question by means of three means, namely assimilation, repression, inside and containment abroad. That means the Turkish state intended to assimilate Kurds, it repressed Kurds when they revolted, and it sort of pursued a policy of containment abroad. That means it did not allow Kurds in Iraq or in Syria to have freedom or to be equal with the Iraqi or the Syrian citizens, etc. Okay, so if, as I said, compare the peace process with what had been done up until 1990s, you can say, yeah, there is something novel here, because it's the first time that a Turkish state enters into a kind of almost open negotiation with an armed organization, and it's the first time that the Turkish state has launched, let me say, some important steps of recognition of the rights of Kurds. But of course, what the Turkish state did change. We know in early 1990s, I mean, the statu quo in Turkey cracked, and we know that President Özal decided to launch a kind of negotiation with the PKK, and in 1991, the first step of recognition was taken. That means for the first time in Turkey after the Republic, Kurds were allowed to speak their language in public. So that means immediately after 1990s, both the negotiation with PKK or with this armed organization started, and some steps of recognition were taken. That means if you look at the issue from this angle, you may say that, okay, similar things took place in early 1990s. But on the other hand, we know that this step of recognition and negotiation did not last long. Özal died in 1993, and then a period of bloodshed took place up until 1999, until the capture of Öcalan, and until when Turkey became a candidate for EU membership. And in 1999, again, some important steps of recognition were taken in Turkey. For the first time in Turkey, teaching Kurdish was allowed, okay? And we know that the death penalty was removed, and this spared the life of Öcalan. So again, I mean, there's a kind of background for AK Party to engage in the current peace process, okay? So this is the kind of background, okay? So you may easily say that, yeah, if you compare what AK Party has been doing in the past few years with what the Turkish state did up until 1990s, you may say, yeah, there is something quite novel here. But as I said, if you look at the developments in early 1990s, you may say that, okay, similar things were also done in Turkey. So this is my answer to my first question. Now, the second question, why did this process start, or why the actors have remained committed to the peace process? Okay, there my answer is quite simple. You know, in 2010, it was realized by both the PKK and the Turkish state that PKK's commitment to the principle of anti-separatism or the principle of integrationism was at risk, okay? That means, you know, PKK since 1993 declared that, okay, it does not want to build a separate state, so it was basically anti-separatist movement. And the other fact was that PKK has always been, I mean, was always committed to the leadership of Öcalan. But the developments in 2010, especially in the region, in Syria and Iraq, proved that, okay, both of these two facts were at risk. That's to say, Öcalan's leadership was at risk, and it was quite likely that the Kurdish movement was about to change its program or its basic principles. Now, I believe that neither Öcalan nor PKK and nor the government itself, okay, want to take these two risks, because, I mean, Öcalan would be no one if he was freed from the leadership of the PKK, and if PKK was freed from the leadership of Öcalan, it could face with partitioning, so on and so forth. Okay, so all these three main actors, PKK, Öcalan, and the government, okay, they felt that they were sort of bound to enter into a kind of peace process. And I think since the conditions which forced this development are still the same, these two actors, PKK and the government, remain committed to the peace process. Now, as to what has been done in the peace process in the past few years, okay, there I can easily say that, yeah, nothing much has been done, but I can also say that, yeah, much has been done. It really depends on the perspective that you assume. That means if you assume that the immediate aim of the peace process is the final resolution of the Kurdish question in Turkey, then you may, yeah, say that, okay, nothing much has been done. But if you admit that the immediate aim of the peace process is not the resolution of the Kurdish question, but is to give an end to the armed struggle, then you may say that, yeah, much has been done, because it's the first time in Turkey that a government, as I said, entered into a kind of open negotiation with an armed organization. And it's again, for the first time in Turkey, that a government let the PKK militants or the militants of an armed organization to withdraw back without launching any operation. So this is assessed by both the PKK and the Kurdish masses. But I think even the PKK and Öcalan, they both, I think, or neither of them assume that the immediate aim of this process is the final resolution of the Kurdish question. They know that this will take a long time. So for the moment, I think all the, both actors, or let's say three actors, PKK, Öcalan, and government, decided that the immediate aim is to give an end to this armed struggle. Okay, so as to my fourth question, I suppose, the stance of the other actors. Well, we have, apart from PKK and government, we have three main actors: MHP, Republican People's Party, and the Gülen Cemaati. I think we can easily forget about MHP. It's a kind of ultranationalist party, and they almost say nothing positive about the peace process. But when you look at the Gülen Cemaati and Republican People's Party, they haven't been that much supportive in the peace process in the past few years. It seems that neither Gülen Cemaati nor the Republican People's Party is ready to admit that the Kurdish question could be solved by means of this kind of a negotiation, or by means of recognizing some basic rights of Kurds. And this fact increases, I suppose, the importance of the peace process, or increases or makes, let's say, what has been done in the past more valuable. Because, as I said, these two actors are not that much supportive. For instance, the Republican People's Party announced a program consisted of 16 or 17 items just last year or the year before. And when you look at these principles or the items, none of them touched upon the very heart of the Kurdish question, namely right to have education in Kurdish, or right to self-rule, or let's say issue of disarmament of the PKK. So the fact that these actors have not been that much supportive, as I said, makes the process more valuable, despite the fact that it seems that nothing much has been done in the process. And how much time do I have?
You have a few minutes.
Okay. Okay, let me finish with a estimation as to what can happen in the coming future after the presidential elections. Okay, I would not support the idea that the peace process is irreversible. I think it is reversible, but I believe that, yeah, it's a bit difficult to return back. Okay, okay. I think in this way, because as I said, the conditions surrounding the PKK and the government have not changed much. I think if today PKK decides to relaunch the armed struggle, it would be a bit difficult for the organization, for the PKK, to convince the Kurds in Turkey that, okay, the armed struggle should resume. Okay, and if the armed struggle resumes with a kind of, let's say, new program, with a, let's say, program of separatism, I think PKK is quite aware of the fact that people, I mean, Kurds, would not buy this new solution. That means not only PKK, but the Kurdish masses are also committed to the principle of anti-separatism. And since this is the fact, as long as the AK Party did not return back to the politics of repression of 30s or 90s, it would be a bit difficult to convince the Kurdish masses to, as I said, to relaunch the armed struggle or to, let's say, renew the program of the PKK, or let's say to follow a kind of separatist program. But on the other hand, we know that, I mean, the developments in region, okay, are quite, how should I say, forcing. We know that PKK, I mean, the PKK leaders themselves announced that they've been invited by, let's say, other regional forces, okay, to return to the armed struggle. So if, as long as, I think, AK Party does not make any serious mistake, it seems that the PKK or the Kurdish masses would not be willing to return to the armed struggle. I think I may stop here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Gunul.
First, I would like to thank the Wilson Center for putting together this event, and Marina for the kind introduction. As you know, after President Obama laid out his strategy in addressing ISIS threat, now there's a new debate both in town and in Turkey about what role. Is this on? Can everyone hear me? So now there's a debate on what role can Turkey play in this new strategy. And President Obama, he talked about a 4-point strategy, and he repeatedly mentioned that this initiative is, he's going to ask for the regional allies to work with him. So that is kind of, that is at the heart of his strategy. And given that Turkey is a NATO member, and it's sharing a long border with Syria and Iraq, and the Islamic State posing a huge threat to Turkey's internal security, you might think that Turkey would be a natural partner in this strategy. But in fact, Turkey might prove to be a reluctant, maybe the most reluctant partner. And there are several concerns underlying Turkey's reluctance, and I would like to talk about those. And the first one is the hostage situation. The ISIS, the Islamic State, has been holding 49 Turkish nationals as hostages that it captured on June 11th. And since then, the safe return of the hostages has become Turkish government's main priority. And Turkey thinks that if Turkey joins a US-led military coalition against ISIS, that might endanger the lives of hostages. So that's why Turkey is concerned about that. And the second concern Turkey has is about the PKK opening the peace initiative. Of course, the end game, Dr. Yan was talking about the end game of the Kurdish opening. So the main question is, will the PKK disarm? There is now a united Kurdish front against ISIS, the PKK Syrian offshoot, the PYD, and its military arm, YPG, as well as the Barzani and his forces, the Peshmerga, are now fighting against ISIS, and they have become the most effective fighting force on the ground. So both the United States and some European countries have been providing arms directly to the Kurds, to Peshmerga, and reportedly there are those arms sent to Iraqi Kurds. Some of them ended up in PKK's hands, and Turkey has been increasingly uncomfortable with this because it's in a process where it's moving forward on the peace deal. And if the end game seems to be the disarmament of the PKK, Turkey cannot really tolerate the PKK both gaining diplomatic strength and also an empowered, militarily empowered PKK. And when President Obama yesterday, he talked about his strategy, he mentioned that we will be supporting our local partners. And local partners mean, if you look at Iraq, the airstrikes worked in Iraq effectively in curbing the Islamic State's movement because of the local partners that the US work with. And those were the Iraqi Kurds and Shia militia and the Iraqi army. Which brings me to the next point about another Turkish concern. The United States has been sending arms to the Iraqi army. And Turkey thinks that the Iraqi security establishment, it's 95% Shia. And if the Western world keeps sending and empowering the Shia, that might really that might shift the balance of power in Iraq at the expense of Sunnis. And Turkey really considers the rise of the ISIS as the direct product of Shia discrimination against Sunni. So that's why Turkey, and most recently Turkish foreign minister, new Turkish foreign minister, in a statement, he said, we are worried about Shias getting more arms in Iraq because that is going to create a huge problem for everyone. That's going to support or feed the base of ISIS, because Turkey doesn't really consider the Islamic State just as a terrorist organization, but argues that it has a base, it has a social base. And there is this climate that is good for expansion of the ISIS, so Sunnis feel marginalized and they feel alienated. Because of the Shia discrimination. So that's why the local Sunni tribes have been supporting the Islamic State. This is the thinking of Ankara. So that's why if you keep empowering the Shiites in Iraq, if you keep sending all those arms to Iraqi security forces dominated by Shiites, that's only going to increase, that's only going to add to the problems and will help the rise of Islamic State further. And also another factor that Turkey is concerned about is the increasing Iran influence in Iraq. Iran has already been playing a very important role in Iraq and played a very constructive role in the coalition building and forming the new government. But Turkey thinks that if Shiites are empowered, that would mean an increased that Iran would increase its sphere of influence in Iraq, and that is an outcome that Turkey would like to avoid. And of course, there is another dilemma, and it is not just a Turkish dilemma, but that's a problem for all the actors who are part of the anti-Assad coalition. If you attack the Islamic State, that's going to help the Assad regime. And Turkey has been in the forefront of the fight against Assad. Since it joined the anti-Assad movement coalition in August 2011, Turkey has become the organizational hub of the Syrian opposition and has played a very active role in the fight against Bashar Assad. And Turkey, I think, paid a very heavy price. It became quite vulnerable. The Assad regime supported the PKK and gave a free hand to Syrian Kurds in the northern part of the country. And that created a lot of problems for Turkey, the Syrian crisis. So Turkey has always looked at Syria, and the only way out for Turkey was Turkey wanted Assad gone as soon as possible. And that was one of the reasons why Turkey got upset with the Obama administration, because Ankara was thinking that once Obama is done with the elections, then he's going to be more supportive, or he would going to be more willing to take a more forceful approach, to pursue a more forceful approach in Syria, and that didn't happen. So because Turkey so desperately needs the removal of Assad, so that strained the tension. So if now a US-led coalition attacks the Islamic State has always been the most effective fighting force against the regime. So that's why an attack against the Islamic State would empower Bashar Assad, and something that Turkey really doesn't want. And there's one more thing that really complicates Turkey's Syria strategy and Turkey's willingness to join the US-led coalition, and that is the Turkish public opinion. There are no studies conducted yet on this, but I assume that the Islamic State, I think the Turkish public is quite concerned about the Islamic State, because there are now 1.2 million Syrians living in Turkey, and there are problems on the border. Turkey shares a long border with Syria and Iraq. So there is a problem, and we already saw a few months ago groups affiliated with the Islamic State staging attack against Shia mosques in Istanbul. So it has become an internal security threat. But on the other hand, the Turkish public might be really skeptical about or unwilling to for Ankara to join a US-led military campaign against a Sunni group. So that might be another complication for the AKP. So I think that's why, because of all those complications and all those problems and reservations, Turkey will play a very limited role in this. And it will definitely, Obama, he didn't specifically mention, talked about the division of labor among the regional allies, but he mentioned stopping the flow of jihadis, and that Turkey can and has to play a very important role in there. Turkey has become a highway for jihadis coming from Europe and going into Syria. So Turkey can play a very crucial role, and I think most recently, after having ignored Western calls to do a better job in controlling the borders and controlling the flow of jihadis, Turkey now finally seems to have realized that, yes, this is a problem, and this will be a bigger problem for my own internal security. So that's why I think finally Turkey and the US are on the same page on that regard. And Turkey already has stepped up its efforts, intelligence efforts, and working with the Western governments, trying to identify the individuals, the jihadis traveling from Europe, jihadis traveling from the United States into Syria. So there's a huge cooperation going on with the Western world on that. But I don't think Turkey will allow the use of Incirlik Air Base for combat missions of the US military. It will, and it already has been allowing the base to be used for humanitarian and logistical help. So I think that will be it. That will be limited to that. And also Turkey can get involved in the training the moderate Syrian opposition, and also work with the US and European governments on intelligence sharing. But here is Turkey's dilemma. On the one hand, Turkey is limited by all these factors that I talked about in its ability to openly join the US-led coalition, military coalition, in the fight against ISIS. But on the other hand, Turkey is the only NATO ally of those willing NATO partners that faces the direct threat from the Islamic State. Again, there are so many, 1.2 million Syrians living in Turkey, and many of them living outside the camps. And there's really little control over the travel. And because there are so many Syrians, the jihadis can move quite freely, especially on the border towns in Turkey. And that's why I think it will be very complicated for the Turkish government because ISIS poses such a big threat for it, but on the other hand, because of all those complications, Turkey really has to walk a fine line. But I think for now, Turkey will not be openly backing the U.S. Coalition, but instead will play a secondary role in Obama's Syria strategy. And I'll stop there and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the entire panel. It's rare that I have chaired a panel that is as disciplined as this one. And in the name of the discipline, I have questions for all the speakers, but given the size of the audience, and I'm sure you'll all have questions, I will just go directly to opening it up to the questions. And I'll take 3 questions at a time and wait for the microphone and introduce yourself here and
Thank you very much. I'm Benjamin Tua. The introductory speaker talked about the need for Turkey to improve relations with Israel and Egypt. Would the panelists address how what obstacles Ankara sees to improvement in these relations, that is between the 2 other Middle East states and Turkey, and what these states themselves can do to remove these obstacles, as well as what Ankara can do?
Brian Beery, Washington correspondent, Europolitics newspaper. The German Marshall Fund yesterday published their Transatlantic Trends survey, and one thing that I thought was a bit unexpected and surprising was that in Turkey, you saw quite a bump in support for EU membership, I think going from 45 to 53%, and support for its existing NATO membership jumping up from 39 to 49%. And I'm just wondering if the panel could enlighten us as to why this might have happened.
Yes.
Wayne Mary, the American Foreign Policy Council. On the very broad topic of today's discussion, it includes Turkey's foreign policy generally. So I'd like to ask about 2 issues that are going to come up in the Erdogan presidency next year: Cyprus and Armenia. After a decade of relative stasis, there have recently been some quite interesting developments between the 2 communities on Cyprus that obviously requires reactions in Ankara. And of course, next year is the centennial for the Armenians. I recognize that both of these issues create more challenges than opportunities, but for a newly minted head of state like Erdogan, they do at least potentially create opportunities for statesmanship. And I'd be interested in the panel's thoughts as to how President Erdogan may deal with either or both of those issues.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to take the relations with Israel?
I don't.
Go ahead. You don't. Okay.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Well, somebody else.
Well, actually, let me begin with the EU, because I think that is the transatlantic survey result. It's quite interesting because for a long time, Turkish public wasn't really interested in the EU membership anymore. And in the introduction, you mentioned that the EU membership has always been there, but on the other hand, with the AKP coming to power and so much engaged in the region, and that overconfidence, and Turkish economy was doing well, and Turkey became a model country in the region, and hence its soft power. So EU wasn't really high on Turkey's agenda. And there are several reasons. I think partly it's Turkey to blame, and partly the European governments, especially Germany and France, that keep talking about a privileged partnership instead of full membership. So that created a nationalist backlash in Turkey. But now it's quite interesting to see that increase in public support for Turkey's EU membership. And that is, I think, partly we can explain that based on the Turkish government's Middle East policy, and especially Syria policy, has been under pressure. And there's a lot of criticism because really the Syrian... Everyone caught off guard in Syria. No one was expecting Assad to survive this long. And I remember Turkey in August 2011, when it shifted its policy from a pro-Assad to an anti-Assad policy, this was the assumption in Ankara. Davutoglu went to Damascus to meet with Bashar Assad, and he went back to Ankara and told the prime minister, Assad has 6 months. Because he didn't, of course, foresee that the minority, the Christians, the Kurds, and even Sunni businessmen would be backing the Assad regime. So he had 40–45% support base. So I think Turkey built its Syria policy on that miscalculation, and now we have so many Syrians living in Turkey, and that created a lot of social tension, not just in border towns, but in places like Istanbul, for instance, or in even Izmir, the coastal towns. They are very visible, and there is this increasing pressure. The crime rate is increased in those towns, and because of the Islamic State and the threat, the security threat it poses, there's a lot of criticism by Turkish public. So Turkey's Syria and Middle East policy, I think, has been criticized heavily, and that's one of the reasons why now Turks see that the EU membership could actually be the way to go for Turkey. And there's another finding in that survey. I think now more and more Turks are supporting Turkey's NATO membership, in the sense that we really need NATO. So that just underlines the fact that there is this threat perception in Turkey, and that's part of the reason why there's a growing interest in Turkey's EU membership. And I think with regard to Israel and Egypt, I think in Egypt, Turkey pursued a very principled stance, contrary to the Obama administration. There was a military coup, and here we're talking about a government that has been itself the victim of the military coups. Of course, Turkey, you cannot expect Turkey to take a different stance. So that's why Turkey from the get-go was very critical of the coup leaders, and that strained Turkey's relations with the Obama administration and with Egypt. So that has become a problem for Turkey's foreign policy, but I think that was only natural. And would this change? We don't know. And I think no one knows, because there was a time when Turkey had the luxury to pursue a foreign policy based on ideology and its values. But now everything is upside down, and we live in a region where things change so fast. And Turkey, like other actors in the region, it's pursuing a very reactive policy. So things on the ground will dictate and will determine the future course of Turkey's foreign policy. So I don't know whether Turkey's Egypt policy will change. And with regard to Israel, I'm not quite hopeful, because I know many people here in this town think that it's the AKP's Islamist ideology that really, that's the main reason for Erdogan's harsh Israel rhetoric. But in fact, Turkey has always been, that's a very popular stance, by the way, in Turkey. We had a center-left prime minister in the 1990s who was as critical as Erdogan. But the difference was, in the 1990s, Turkey really needed Israel. Turkey had no relations with Iran, very hostile with Iraq. With Syria, the two countries almost went to war. So in that geostrategic context, Israel became the main strategic ally, the counterweight to Turkey's relations with other regional powers. But in this geostrategic context, I think Turkey can afford to lose Israel. And now there is even Israeli attack against Gaza is it's very unpopular in Turkey. So I think he's just reflecting the public mood. So that's why I think Turkey-Israel relations will not really be back on track as long as Israeli aggression continues in Gaza.
You want to take the next?
Well, I will say a few words about the Armenian thing. I mean, the relation between Turkey and Armenia in 2015. Of course, this is a very fragile year. it is very difficult to expect Armenians in general to go back from their maximalist positioning, that they had for so many years, especially the Dashnaks, of course. But we also know that there are some new currents, new dynamics in the Armenian community in the world. There are people now from different countries, in fact, getting together, and they want citizenship from Turkey, for example. They want the cultural heritage to renovate it and so on. So there are these kind of softer approaches, and surely the government will seek those approaches and be in touch with those. Of course, it depends on what Armenia as a state will do. But as I said, we shouldn't expect too much from 2015. I think things will be much better in the sense that people will be more relaxed after 2015. And then maybe we will see some real relations coming up between Armenians and Turks, and Turkey and Armenia as well.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to say only a few words about this research about the EU membership. To be honest, I wish we had the details, but I think we can speculate on the basis of what you have said. Maybe it's because, this rise is because the seculars in Turkey start to have changed their minds. Because, in the past 10 years, the seculars in Turkey became quite reluctant about the EU membership, about NATO, about West, etc., etc. Maybe it's, after what they observed in AK Party, in the years when AK Party in power, maybe they sort of start to renew their position with regard to the West, with regard to the EU, with regard to the NATO. I'm not sure, but this could be the main reason, or one of the reasons at least.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, more questions? Yes, back there.
Mustafa Gürbüz, George Mason University. I would like to ask about the Kurdish issue to get more details, and it's for Dr. Yen and also for Mr. Mahchupian. About the hard package, I would like to start with hard package. You mentioned the Kurdish issue is a very critical issue in the package. Three points you mentioned, one of them was Kurdish issue. So it seems that it is a very critical issue in the government's mind. And Dr. Yan also talked about how this issue is perceived as a long-term strategy in the sense that there is a ceasefire, but this is just the beginning. And it will turn out, we will see the fruits in upcoming years. So maybe it would be an opportunity for you to go further for your, Dr. Yan, for your other details to share, because it was 10 minutes and you couldn't share all the details in your mind, as far as I understand. So my question would be about this particular issue, about the PKK's active fighters in Syria and Iraq. So for a guerrilla movement and a guerrilla organization, having active fighters in now against ISIS and also PYD's active fight in Syria, northern Syria, it is I would think it's a great opportunity for a guerrilla movement to have this active fight and hope and also being on the table with the Turkish government for the first time. So as far as we look at the guerrilla movements in the world in a comparative perspective, we would see that if there is a hope, and then if there is a frustration, a major frustration, then everything could go back and there would be reversal. And as you mentioned, this is a possibility. Reversal could be a possibility. But this reversal could be not only a rearmament, but also more dangerous for Turkey, because
What's the question?
Yes. So the question is, for after this hope and frustration, for both Kurdish side and the Turkish side, Turkish Nationalist Party and the Kurdish hawks, I would say, what could happen? And could you please illustrate more details about this peace negotiations, not nuts and bolts? Thank you.
Okay. The lady there in the center, yes.
Good evening. I'm from the Iraqi embassy. I just would like to mention that we really appreciated as a government the U.S. help in all terms, airstrikes and other helps with weapons supporting the Iraqi military forces. I just would say to Miss, I don't know, sorry, your name. So I'm sorry about that. So it doesn't strengthen the Shia power in Iraq. Sorry about that, because it strengthen and give power to the Iraqi forces in Iraq, whom working side by side with Peshmerga Kurdish forces to defeat ISIS. And also I would like to say that Iraqi forces include generals from Shia and Sunni. So it's not Shia power. And also I would say the Iraqi government is independent government in each term, which is mean there is no influence from our neighbors in our decision as a government. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That was a statement and not a question, so we will take it as such. I will add a question from the overflow room, the people who are sitting in the boardroom where the rest of us had lunch. And the question is as follows, that today Turkey refused permission for the US to conduct missions against ISIL from Turkish soil. And then the question is, what can President Obama offer Erdogan for cooperation? What can NATO offer Erdogan for cooperation?
49 Americans.
That was a quick question. Okay, that's the other question, please. We have two questions on the table. Maybe there is a slightly longer answer than the one that you provided. Yes?
You would like to start, or?
No, I mean,
Okay.
You already gave your answer. Okay.
Well, as the gentleman's question, the details about the, after the ceasefire. Well, I admit that in the peace process, we only have the ceasefire, and we have the fact that the Turkish state, as I said before, allowed the PKK militants withdraw back in safety. Okay, so nothing much seems to have been done, but I think PKK has already announced what it actually wants for a final resolution. These are already on the table. We know that PKK wants to be recognized as a legal actor. That's say not only a general amnesty, but it wants not only a general amnesty, but it wants to be recognized as a legal actor in Turkish politics. It only wants a kind of decentralization or self-rule, and it wants Kurdish being recognized as a kind of official regional language or as a medium of instruction in public schools. So these are on the table. And I'm sure that all these three demands of the PKK are supported by the almost half of the Kurdish masses. So it means that, yeah, these nothing much seems to have been done with regard to these last 2 points. But on the other hand, I think in İmralı prison, some negotiations must have been done with regard to these two issues as well. That's to say, I don't think that one day Kurdish masses could be persuaded that, okay, they should not fight for decentralization, or they should not fight for Kurdish being recognized as a kind of official language. So despite nothing much has been done with regard to these issues, PKK remains loyal because PKK now is almost running half of Kurdistan. Let's say HDP or BDP runs half of the Kurdistan and Turkish Kurdistan, and is the first important power in Syrian Kurdistan, and is an important power in Iranian Kurdistan, and trying to be powerful in Iraqi Kurdistan as well. That means the current situation, let's say the ceasefire situation, is working for the PKK actually. Let's say under these conditions, PKK would not want to return to the armed struggle, even if reforms concerning education and administration were not introduced, okay? Because it knows that as long as the situation or the status quo in Syria does not change, it will recruit militants for the organization, and in fact, it can become the leading almost party, or it can be in fact leading the cantonal governments in Syrian Kurdistan. So this is, I think, why PKK is, as I said, loyal to the process, despite the fact that nothing much has been done. As to the second question that you have asked, I think the terms of the issue have changed since 2010. I mean, in 2010, yeah, the idea was to basically disarm the PKK. But now, after the developments in Syria and Iraq, I think it's a bit difficult to persuade PKK for a total disarmament. I think now the idea is to stop the fight between PKK and the Turkish army. But on the other hand, PKK, I think, will continue to have its armed forces in both Syrian and Iraqi Kurdistan. And I think Turkey will not resist this because, again, I think no one can persuade Kurdish masses in Turkey, in Syria, in Iraq, elsewhere, okay, that PKK should surrender its arms after, especially what happened in Shengal or in Iraq. So this is a bit, of course, difficult and new situation for Turkey, but I think, I mean, Turkish authorities are rational enough to recognize, okay, this new situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me take another round. You had your hand up there. Let me remind everybody that the question ends with a question mark. In other words, it's not a statement.
Very short. Murat Erdogan from Hacettepe University, and here fellow in American Institute for Contemporary German Studies. To be understand better Turkish in politics, what was the Gezi? I want to ask to all. Thank you. Gezi.
Yes, the lady here.
Thank you. Julia Clonis, an economist. In the introductory statement, it was mentioned that Turkey belongs to Europe. I assume European Union. If that's so, I would appreciate an explanation, a clarification about the substance of the statement, given the cooling off or more as a reluctance of Turkey to pursue all the process of becoming a member. Thank you.
I think I'm going to take the prerogative of the chair and asking a question myself. I'm sorry about that. And I think that going back to the issue of the Kurdish initiative, it is sometimes difficult to understand for an outsider the policy of Turkey, where certainly does not want an autonomous region in Kurdish region within Turkey itself, but seems to be has moved a long way towards supporting, if not independence for Iraqi Kurdistan, certainly a great deal of autonomy. You have been helping with the export of oil. You are part of that entire process. So I'd like, could you please explain a little more about that situation and the discrepancy between the two? Okay. Who's taking on which? No, we'll have another round. You want to start?
Okay. Now I will give the answer, if I may, to Gezi. What is it? What it is? I mean, many people think that it has two parts, and I think the same way. The first week, a few days, was a kind of a social protest by the newcomers to the public sphere. All the newcomers were from the young generation or the mid-generations or the families of the young generation in the secular community. And the problem was that they are not represented very well in politics. They don't think that they like CHP at all, but they don't have any connection with AK Party for understandable reasons. And they think themselves as more knowledgeable, educated, and modern, Western, and things like that. So they felt that there is a psychological kind of narrowing down, of the public sphere, that they know of after the AK Party. And AK Party is a very, very politically minded party. They don't understand anything related to the social issues, really. And so, and in fact, if that social issue is related to the secular community, they don't understand it in any way. So it was a shock for AK Party. They had a hard time to understand, to see what it is. And that was the first week or so. And then we saw the professionals. We saw the people, the bourgeoisie of the Turkish higher classes thought that this may be a good tool to kind of push AK Party, at least if not bringing it down. So that was an attempt, again, to kind of discredit AK Party and, if possible, to turn it into a social upheaval through that and bring down the government. So it was two things mixed, and both are correct. I mean.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
There was a question about what US and NATO can offer to Turkey because Turkey wants to play a limited role in Syria. I think, as I said, Turkey's main priority is now the hostages. And I think the two countries are already working, cooperating on that. And reportedly, they're sharing intelligence. And there's a news article, I think, appeared in one of the Turkish news outlets 2-3 days ago that the Americans, the US already has, they've located where the Turkish hostages are, so that apparently they are working, they're cooperating behind closed doors. And the other concern, the most important concern Turkey has, is the flow of weapons. And the PKK ending up having all those American supplied weapons. And I guess, I don't know how, but I guess the US should assure Turkey that it has some kind of control over the flow of those weapons. So I think those were would be the most important priorities for Turkey. And I'm not sure if I understood your question about the European Union. You asked me why Turkey
is saying that Turkey belongs to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I assume it meant being a member of the European Union. If that's so, then how does jive together with the reluctance of Turkey to become a member now? Because originally Turkey had been invited to apply for membership, but then there was a cooling off. So now Turkey is supposed not to pursue membership.
No, well, Turkey is not an EU member. Has been trying to be.
And is not interested anymore to become.
No, actually, that's recently the gentleman over there. He mentioned the recent public opinion poll. There's been a public nationalist backlash in 2006 against EU membership, and that has reason. I mean, Turkey started the formal negotiations in 2005, and 1 year after that, countries like Germany and France, they started talking about a privileged partnership for Turkey instead of a full membership. So that became a problem for Turkish public, and Turkey was less interested in the EU membership, was very engaged in the Middle East. Turkish economy was doing well, and there was that perception that Turkey could never become an EU member because of its Muslim identity. So that was the perception of the Turkish public. So that's why the support for EU membership dropped. But apparently, according to this new study by the German Marshall Fund, there's an increase in Turkey's support, Turkish public support for EU membership. And as I mentioned before, I think that has something to do with the frustration of Turkish society with the government's Middle East policy and all the chaos going on in the region, and also the threat perception for Turks because of the Islamic threat. So I think there is now the new push. We can explain that looking at those factors.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. First, I would like to say a few words about the Gezi event. I think Gezi events have shown two things basically. First, I think it proved that there is a huge mass in Turkey, the members of which are quite dissatisfied with what AK Party has been doing in the past. There's a kind of huge anger. This is obvious. The demonstrations revealed this anger, and I think this should be conceded by AK Party, or it should be recognized. But on the other hand, or at the very same time, the protests revealed also that the opposition in Turkey has not sort of found the proper ways of removing AK Party from the power. Okay, yeah, you may believe that AK Party should be removed from power, but I think the proper ways have not been found yet. And again, the protesters or the mind behind the protests could not sort of show any real alternative to the AK Party. That means the masses were not persuaded that, yeah, AK Party should be replaced by this or that party. Okay, so I think these are the two facts proven or revealed by the Gezi protests. As to your question, the relations between the AK Party government and the Iraqi Kurdistan, I think there are a few reasons as to why we have such deep, strong relations between AK Party government and the Iraqi Kurdistan. The first reason is something related to what Etienne mentioned. Turkey, as he mentioned, wants to sort of refresh its Ottoman past, or it reminds of its Ottoman past, and we know that the Iraqi Kurdistan was the last portion of the Ottoman land, okay, separated from Ottoman state only in 1918. This is the first reason. I mean, Turkey, yeah, wants to sort of remind of its Ottoman past. The second thing, of course, it has to do with what AK Party has been doing in the region in general. As we know, AK Party, especially after the United States withdrew from Iraq, AK Party believed that a kind of new game, okay, was on the agenda. That means AK Party believed that through a kind of cooperation with the especially Ihwan line in the different countries in the region, it can play a kind of, let's say, strong role in the region. And having strong relations with KDP is a part of this, I think, attempt. But we know that this attempt has almost fallen down. I think it's only the KDP. I mean, KDP remained almost only sort of partner of AK Party in the region. The third, of course, has to do with the energy business. There's a kind of huge market in Iraqi Kurdistan, and Turkey wants to be. I mean, it's logical to be willing to be a kind of, I don't know main actor in energy business. But I think a fourth issue is maybe most important of all. I think AK Party, through having such strong relations with Iraqi Kurdistan, AK Party wants to sort of balance the PKK line with the KDP line, because it feels that, okay, KDP is much more close to its own. I mean, KDP and AK Party, they share a vision concerning region, concerning world, concerning culture, Islam, etc., etc. So, and AK Party is clever enough to see that PKK can be another main actor in Iraqi Kurdistan as well. So I think having this kind of a good connection might, I think AK Party thinks that might help AK Party to sort of balance the PKK line with the KDP line. And we know that now in Turkey, there are many politicians, organizations who are in, which have close connections with the KDP line. I mean, they are working hard, okay, to balance the PKK line. I think these are the main reasons.
And may I just add one thing? And I think there are also structural factors at play here. There's a change in the mindset in Turkey, and as well as the military is not calling the shots anymore. So that's why the KRG, I think Turkey is now less concerned about an independent Kurdistan. And ironically, the Kurdistan regional government has become the only regional ally Turkey has now. I mean, if you look at with Maliki, Turkey had horrible relations in Syria. Turkey is fighting on the opposite front, and with Iran because of Syria, ties are strained. So Barzani all of a sudden appeared as the only guy that Turkey can count on. And that's why I think the Erdogan government, it made Barzani as an important component of its both Iraq and Syria policy and also its domestic Kurdish politics.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. We have run out of time. I have to apologize to those of you who still had the questions here, both in this room and in the overflow room. We clearly did not address all the questions that people had. We did our best in the allotted time. Thank you very much.
Bayılıyorum.
It's the Russian origin, not American.
Perfect. So
Well, I am Italian, but I keep the train running.